Good day, YouTube. The beginning of this video, the Air Force cadets were singing the third verse of the Air Force song at the Air Force Academy. I went to a ball game just a few days ago, and at the end of this video, you'll see some highlights of that. Today, I'm going to talk about dual military. That means when you have a couple that's married and they're in the military. But before I start about that, let me talk about this. The Air Force Times, this is for January. I borrowed this from my friend and neighbor who lives next door. He's actually in the Air Force as well. It has all of the raises for 2016. It has the latest numbers for BAH, for your base pay for all ranks, regardless of how many years you have, whether you're Air Force, active duty, guard, or reserve. Good information. Let me give you an example. I live in Colorado Springs, but work based out of Denver at Buckley Air Force Base, 76 miles from here. The housing allowance went up 2% here in Colorado Springs, and it went up 12% in Aurora/Denver, where I work. So I get that 12% increase. I did see it in my paycheck, and I was very surprised. All of that is tax-free. You can actually go to Air Force Times, or you can look it up online and get the numbers for this year. So let's say you have two service members who are married. For this example, I'm going to say you have a staff sergeant, an E5, and a tech sergeant. And I have my cat right here, one of my cats, trying to get into the video. But the tech sergeant, if they're married and you live off base, that person will get, my cat, that person will get the full BAH, which is your housing allowance, and if you have dependents, with dependents rate. And then the staff sergeant, the spouse, will get the single allowance for their rank for the staff sergeant. I hope that makes sense, but in the end, if you have a dual military couple who are married, of course, and live off base, they are going to make some good money every month, all of it tax-free. I'm going to make up numbers here. Let's just say you have the tech sergeant and the housing allowance is $1,500, and then you have the staff sergeant, the spouse, and the single BAH rate, let's just say it's $1,000. Well, that's $2,500 in tax-free housing allowance that they can spend. And if they only, let's say they rent a house or an apartment for $1,200 or $1,500, they can pocket the rest of that money. So BAH is a good thing if they live off base. If they live on base, it's a different story. They won't get the housing allowance, but they'll get to stay out the on-base housing for free. When you PCS, permanent change of station, so we left Colorado at one point and moved to Hawaii, which is considered overseas. Well, we had two cars, but the Air Force, because we only had one member, which is me, in the service, in the Air Force, they will ship one vehicle. If you're dual military, they will ship two vehicles overseas as long as you can actually send your vehicles out there. So for example, Japan, if I'm not mistaken, you cannot send your vehicles overseas. The Air Force won't even pay for that. So if you are dual military, you can ship two vehicles. One of the bigger things that I would focus on are the jobs. So for example, let's say you're dual military and one individual works for security forces and the spouse works in personnel. Most bases have both of those jobs, so that seems to me like a logical, easy thing for the Air Force to set up. In Colorado Springs, we have several Air Force bases, so one individual or both could be at, let's say, Peterson Air Force Base, but if there isn't an opening for the security forces member, maybe he or she can go to the Air Force Academy or Schriever or Cheyenne Mountain. So the Air Force, it is the experience that I have, even though I'm not dual military. I'm speaking from what I've seen. The Air Force will try to get you together if you're married most of the times. And most of the times it works, but one of the things that could happen is somebody can be in Alabama and the spouse could be in Georgia because that's the closest that the Air Force can get them together. That's something to keep in mind. I will put an important link on this video in the description that I found according to the Department of Defense as far as dual military benefits. It's a great link. Check it out and you'll find a lot of good information. They're actually the experts. I'm not. I'm speaking from what I've seen and what I've researched. The next thing and last thing is this. In the military, you will have to deploy, most likely, especially when you're active duty. So what the Air Force does is there are windows when I can deploy. Let's just say my window is from March through September of 2016. And if I'm married to another service member, what they will try to do, in most cases successfully, is put the spouse on a different window. That way we deploy at different times, because if we have family members, children, they want to ensure that we can actually have a good plan for that. But the other thing is this, when you have a family, you're going to have a family care plan, whether you're dual military or not. A family care plan identifies if I have to deploy, who's going to take care of my children. Because the Air Force does not want me to say, oh, I can't deploy right now. It's not a good time because I don't have a plan. So that's going to be reviewed every year. I hope this was helpful. A lot of good videos coming up. My daughter is going to college later this year. She also wants to join the Air Force. In 1 week, we're going to her university that she has selected. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about ROTC. I'm going to talk about college, post 9/11 GI Bill, because she's going to use that. And I'm going to give you some examples in the next few weeks on that video. So I hope you enjoy it. You take care.
A 6'5" junior from Austin, Texas, number 35, Aiden Grant. And a 6'11" senior